Hi everyone, thanks for this episode of Nick Egan Times. On this episode, we have a sensational legendary guest. We have Sue Humphrey. Sue is a three-time Olympic track and field coach. Sue has coached athletes ages 7 to adult in a wide variety of settings, from elementary schools to the world's largest stage of sporting events. Sue has worked with some of the biggest names in track and field events, including Wilt Chamberlain, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, and Florence Griffith Joyner. And Sue coached the 1996 gold medalist Charles Austin in the men's high jump. And in 2004, Sue served as the head coach for the US Olympics women's track and field team. Welcome, Sue, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our visit.
So am I. How's it all been going over there in Texas?
Texas is hot one day and snow the next. So right now we're in the hot phase. So that's good.
Cool. How did the pandemic affect you during COVID?
It basically, locked us all down. So we couldn't really go places. It from a coaching point of view, it developed Zoom in our mind, and we got to use Zoom quite a bit. We had a lot of our coaching seminars using Zoom, and so it was really good from that point of view. I got to meet a lot of coaches that I didn't know or hadn't been familiar with, and so developed a lot of good coaching friendships.
Incredible. All right, let's just jump straight into it. Tell me about your life growing up, your background, and I guess how you got into, the sports side of business in your life.
Okay, well, I got into coaching back when I was in high school. And at that time, there was in the States no interscholastic sports for girls in high school, except what I considered kind of the country club sports, the badminton, golf, tennis. And so what we had to do if we wanted to do track or if we wanted to do swimming or anything other than those other sports was to join clubs. So we had clubs through the AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union. And that's how I got involved in working with some of my friends were athletes that were pretty good. I went and was figured out very quickly I was not as gifted as athletically as they were, but I loved the sport and I loved being around the atmosphere. And so I kind of hung around the coaches and started to learn that way. And again, at that time in the late 60s, early 70s, there was no internet, no YouTube. So we had to learn things by talking to other coaches or going to a library and checking out books and that type of thing, learn by doing. And pretty much that's the way I got started coaching an age group girls team in Phoenix, Arizona.
That's outstanding. All right. Tell me, let's go fast forward, I guess, to the Olympics and I guess that trajectory. Tell me about that and what that was like.
Well, the Olympics, I've been very fortunate to be in three different Olympiads, 92, 96, and then 2004. And in 92, I was the head manager of the women's team. And that meant that all the travel, all the logistics of getting the team from one place to another was on me. And so I had to make sure the practices were set up, the athletes were where they were supposed to be, when they were supposed to be, their equipment was there. And that was quite a massive undertaking just because in the United States, the track team does not really travel as a team. It's not like a basketball team or a field hockey team that they go as a group. We're all over the place. And so if we have 50 athletes, it could be 50 different arrivals. And so that's pretty much what I was doing before the actual competition started is, again, making sure everybody was where they were supposed to be in Barcelona, Spain at that time. And then going through opening ceremonies was probably my Olympics, if you will. In other words, being part of opening ceremonies and marching into with the flag and the crowd and the music and just seeing that whole stadium effect. I can only imagine what the athletes see when they compete because that was kind of my mini Olympics, walking out to the USA song, and to just see that, and the flags waving, and just that whole magic, if you will. It also was the first time that the U.S. had sent professional men's basketball players. So that was the Dream Team in '92. And that was the Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, that group. And of course, they marched in also. And so that was quite a quite a show, because the U.S. athletes were just as excited to see the basketball players as the foreign countries were. And it got to be a little bit scary there for a while, because the Spanish organizing committee had these, I guess, like little bodyguards set up to keep us all in our little country area. Like if you look at opening ceremonies, you see the countries are all grouped on the infield. Well, when the men's basketball team came in and people were aware by the screen that the Michael Jordan was there, all hell broke loose, and all the different countries started rushing toward us, and the little security people were not prepared for that at all. So it got to be a little, like I say, it got to be a little scary with some of the pushing and shoving that was going on, but it got rectified pretty quickly, and then we enjoyed the rest of the time, and everybody got in and out without further ado.
Wow.
So that was my first Olympic experience. And again, it was from a staffer point of view or coach point of view, that's the magic, is the opening ceremonies or the closing ceremonies.
That's amazing. Dealing with so many different personalities, how did you deal with that?
Well, it's hard, I'll tell you, because we have, about 130 athletes, male and female, and some of them get along and some of them don't get along, and and then they have their personal coaches. So you're dealing with personal coaches, you're dealing with medical, and then just the U.S. Olympic Committee and their rules of trying to keep everybody following along. When I was selected to be on the staff, I was active in USA track and field in women's development. And so I had grown up, if you will, with several of the women athletes over their career. I knew them from when they came in as juniors or collegiate athletes, and then as they developed their pro career. So we had a rapport, and I made sure that I got to know them and their coaches, because that created a better working environment than just me on one side and the coach on the other. And we have agents here also that are pretty powerful for the athletes. And so you had to know the coach, the agent, the athlete, maybe their parents or significant other. I mean, there was a lot of networking going on before and during to keep everybody happy, because like you say, you want the athletes there to perform. They're not there to worry about, does their mother have a ticket for tonight's race? Does my coach have a pass to get into the warm-up area? And these are things that the athletes do worry about, obviously, and it takes away their energy from competing at their best. So that's the type of thing we try to diffuse, and it's ongoing, that's for sure.
Yeah, wow, that's great insights. Tell me, entering, I guess, a man's world as a woman, even up to now, women's sports really taken off. Women empowerment. It's obviously changed a lot, the whole world. But how was it, I guess, in your younger years coming into a man's world? How did that impact you, and how did you deal with it, I guess?
It was very challenging, and still is at times, but when I first started, I definitely was one of the few, if not the only, female coach in the room. And so I had to pretty much, defend myself, fight for my own beliefs about things, and, stand up for what I believed in, voice my opinion. I was also young, and so I had kind of two negatives, being my youth and then the gender. And so I think I just kind of bulled my way in, and, I volunteered when I saw areas that needed to be done. I didn't let myself be the little side person that went and got coffee for the guys. I didn't fall into that category. And I was very fortunate to have some good athletes right away, work with good athletes that gave me credibility as a coach, off the track also. And so it wasn't just the athletes I was working with were doing well, but now my peers, my male peers, were more respectful because they saw I kind of knew what I was doing, or I was learning what I was doing. And so that was definitely a benefit. I've over the years, I've been called many names. I've been, told to get in my place. But in Japan, in the mid 80s, I was the head coach of the women's U.S. team to the World Cup. And we had a dual meet in Japan on the way to, maybe that's where I came to Australia. That was Australia. On the way to Australia, we came through Japan, and we had to meet there in Tokyo. And the opening ceremonies, they asked for the head coach of the men's team and a head coach of the women's team to come up on the stage. Well, when I tried to get onto the stage, they said, no, 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 no women, no women. And we tried to explain that I was the head coach. Well, again, culturally, that didn't fly. They didn't care. So my assistant was a male, and so he went up. But that was a classic case internationally of the separation and just the second class citizen. And unfortunately, when I complained about it to one of our USA officials, who was with the team, he pretty much told me to just calm down and go have a beer and don't worry about it. Well, that infuriated me even more. So, I was getting the negativity from the Japanese, but also from the Americans. So it was a male-female thing, definitely.
Wow. Wow. Well, having, I guess, such a big job, and that's incredible pressure. You're representing obviously not just yourself but your whole country. And even in Australia, we know how much, I guess, the USA really take their sport seriously, especially when it comes to the Olympics. So how did you? Obviously that's very a proud moment, obviously being the head coach. But how did you handle the pressure, and I guess what did you learn from the pressure as well? Like what when it was all said and done, what did you take out of it and learn from it as well?
Well, in 2004, when I was the head coach, I'd already been, like I say, in Barcelona, and then in Los Angeles in 96 as an assistant coach. So I knew pretty much the workings, but as more of not as the head coach. And so, like you say, the pressure is there, the publicity is there, the newspaper reporter is there. And you have to, and keep in mind, in the United States, these are volunteer positions. We don't get paid for this.
Oh wow, I
This
didn't
is
know that.
all
Yeah.
volunteer. And so you get the sweatsuit and the t-shirt and the bag and the pressure. And so you're dealing with the pressure of the relay team selection. In '04, we had the drug situation. So we had the pressure of, is this athlete going to be eligible to run or not run? And so you deal with that on an ongoing basis, and you have to be very careful because obviously there's things that that within the team that should not be publicized, just personal issues or things going on, injuries, illnesses, that would be very noticeable on a worldwide stage. And so it's pressure. There's no doubt about it, and I think because you're up early, you're up at 5 a.m. to go to the morning session, and then you come back for a few hours, maybe to the village. And I would usually try to get like a 30-40 minute nap in. And then you go to the evening session. You won't get back till midnight, 1 a.m. And it started all over again. And so after we had a situation in Athens, it was right around the Gulf War also. And so we had, on the administrative side, we had the additional burden of knowing that our State Department and our Secret Service were there guarding us in potential war situations. Now, obviously, we didn't tell the athletes this, but we as a staff knew things. And as I found out later, the U.S. had military troops in Italy on call in case they needed to come in and get us. So, you see the guy walking around with the little black bag, which is your security guard. And when he's sitting next to you and suddenly gets up and rushes away, it's kind of like, oh gosh, is something going on, or does he need a drink? So
Yeah.
what's happening? But I think when you're coaching, you've got to be, and as you go through and learn, you've got to learn how to handle stress, whether it be dealing with your athlete or in this case, dealing with the whole team, and making things as calm for them. You have to appear very calm and not let them know that anything's going on that might affect how they perform.
Wow, that's wonderful. All right. What would you say to, and it's not even just sports related, this one, any young woman or lady coming up in any kind of industry, it doesn't just have to be athletics. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think today, again, the young ladies and young men have so many opportunities and so many, whether it be in athletics or in other sports. When they're younger, what I would advise parents and coaches is let the kids try all the different sports. In other words, if they want to play football, if they want to do soccer, if they want to do basketball, give them experiences in all the different sports, because you just never know where their talents might be, and not trying to pigeonhole them into one way that you want it to be, but find out the way the student wants, and to have passion. I think that's the biggest thing. To be successful in athletics, obviously you need talent, but you also need to have a passion for what you're doing. It's long hours, it's hard, it hurts, it's not always fun. You have to miss out on certain social activities that your friends are going to. I had to visit with a young man just yesterday who's one of the athletes I work with. He's a senior in high school here, so he's 18, and he's trying to be Mr. Social, have the girlfriend, stay out and do all this, but then compete at 8 o'clock Saturday morning. And so we're getting a little pull. He wonders why he's tired. And so, his folks and I have had little discussions with him about, you got to step back and evaluate what's more important to you. And I think as they get older, the athlete will then start to realize to make better decisions. I think the parents and coaches need to just be as supportive as possible. Even if the athlete chooses something that you didn't want or didn't suggest, like maybe a father wants the kid to be a basketball star because he was a basketball star, but the kid maybe is only 5'10", or 180 meters, and obviously he's not going to be a basketball star if he's only 180. So it's being supportive of your child, and being there for them through the good and the bad, because they need you mostly when things don't go well.
Cool. Well, you've worked with, I guess, a lot of legends. Who was the best person, or who have been the best people or legends you've worked with, and why?
Well, I don't want to pick one because that obviously will come back and get me. In the intro, you had mentioned Wilt Chamberlain and Jackie and Flo-Jo, and then I'll add in Charles Austin, who was the high jumper that won the gold medal in '96. Each of them, it was a different scenario. Charles was day to day here in Texas in the 1990 to 2004 reign, and I saw him through injury. I saw him through knee operations. I saw him through American records. I saw him through, unfortunately, actually in Sydney Olympics, he didn't even make it out of the qualifying round because his shoes were the wrong size. And of course, that I couldn't believe that he hadn't tried his shoes on before going out to the track. But that was what happened. Here you are, defending Olympic champion, and you don't even make it to the next finals in the next games. So, all the trials and errors I went through with him are all very special to me. But then the time that I spent in California with Wilt and Jackie and Florence and that group, I also at the time was coaching a high jumper, Colleen Sommer, and she was the first woman who ever went 2 meters in high jump. And she went indoors in Canada, actually, in 82. And so we had a very elite group there, and Wilt sponsored us with the Wilt's Athletic Club. So he wasn't just a financial sponsor, but he was actually there, traveled with us, was physically at the meets and things like that. Wilt, to me, and you can read all you want about Wilt, and there's good stories and not so good stories, but Wilt to me was a very special person, because at a time when I needed some financial help and needed some support to get around to meets, he was there for me. One New Year's Eve, he called me at like 2 a.m. just to talk about my future and what were my goals and my plans, and not just a hi, how are you, but I mean, it was like an hour or so phone call, in the middle of the night. And I'm like, my gosh, so he genuinely showed care and concern for myself and for the athletes that I was working with. Jackie, I'd known since high school. We have junior elite camps here in the States. And so I'd met her when she was a high school athlete. And because she was a jumper, we just kind of got a rapport going. And so then through her career, I would see her at meets and we would chat. And then when she got with Bob Kersee, who was her coach and later her husband, she was not a real confident high jumper. And high jumping is kind of my forte, if you will. And so Bobby said to me, you've got a good rapport with her. You know what you're doing. You coach her in high jump. And so I was very fortunate through the 90s to actually work with her in high jumping and trying to get her high jumping better and more confident. They would bat heads about, training with high jump and so forth. So he basically said, you work with her and the success will come. So I was a coach to Jackie, but also a sounding board, because there were times when in 1990, she had set world records and was, the top of the field. And we were at a meet, Goodwill Games in Seattle, Washington. And she said, come here, Sue, just walk with me. And she said, everybody was on her to set another world record. The pressure, you talk about the pressure of a coach, pressure of a world champion and a world record holder. When are you going to set the next world record? And so I was more of a listener or sounding board, I guess, to her at that time. And so that she would just vent and I would try to, chat and try to neutralize out her concerns and things, but just to be there as a non-confrontational, non-expectation of her. And so we're friends to this day. Her birthday was this last week, and, I reached out to her then. So she's a lifelong friend for sure, and doing excellent job now working with youth back in her home in East St. Louis. Flo-Jo I knew back before she was Flo-Jo, when she was just Florence. And again, she was a sprinter, so I didn't work with her directly, but we were all part of the team. And so I saw her through her transitions and going from, a college athlete at Northridge and at UCLA, and then obviously in the US in 84 and doing well. And then obviously the big breakthrough in 88. And Florence was always very friendly, very nice, very agreeable to do things. And, just a real nice person. Now, once she stepped on the track, you didn't mess with her. She was definitely there to win and to do very well. But I have had a real good relationship with her, and then her husband Al Joyner, who obviously is Jackie's brother. So I knew Al from Jackie also. So it's kind of a big family affair in that regard.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing all that. It's amazing. Well, Being in the, I guess, the Olympic inner sanctum, what's the view like? What is it like being inside that?
In Barcelona, when I sat there during the multi-events in the morning, the stadium was pretty empty, except for the competition going on in multis. And I looked around and you see all the flags of the countries. And the biggest thing is all of a sudden there's those 5 rings. And you're like, this is the Olympics now. This is not an all-comers meet. This is not a national championship or even an international competition. This is the championship. And, it's the same athletes that are there that you've competed against for years, and they just have different uniforms on. And in some cases, if they were over here in the States as a collegiate athlete, they could have been one of your teammates. But now all of a sudden they have a different kit on and they're representing their home country. So it's magic. It's something that people dream of. And, it's hard to describe. Like I say, the biggest thing to me was just the overwhelming feeling I got marching in 92 during opening ceremonies. I was able to march in 96 and in 2004. So each time was special, but 92 was most special, I think, because it was the first. And just to see all of that, again, the importance that the world puts on it. And unfortunately, in the United States, track and field is not as popular all the time as it should be. And so the public only pays attention to track every 4 years. And so, that's hard because we try to keep the sport going and booster the athletes, and they just don't start training every 4 years. So we have to keep supporting them throughout and publicizing the sport. So it's the passion that you bring to the whole event. It's everything.
What inspires you daily?
What inspires me daily? I think helping athletes achieve something that they're working toward that they have not done before. I work a lot with high school kids right now, and seeing them perform well in their meets, seeing them learn a technique, and suddenly that light bulb goes off that, oh, this is what you've been talking about for, months or years. We are in season right now. So on Saturday mornings, we have high school competitions, and seeing the athletes perform well, get that grin on their face, that's the magic of it. But then you also have to be there when they don't do so well and either figure out what you as a coach have done or needed to do better, what they didn't maybe follow through and do as an athlete, or whether that was the way it was on that day. And sometimes that's a hard lesson to learn too. But I think the passion for me is watching people improve and watching people, whether they're 10 years old or 30 years old, to see and to get excited about their success also.
Great. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think from the whole Olympic experience, the best advice I got was from Coach Ed Temple, the Tennessee Tiger Bells, who was Wilma Rudolph's coach, Wyoming Attias, he was like the first grandfather of women's track and field in the States. And again, African-American coach with the African-American girls team. So they went through segregation totally, and had to fight to just be neutralized and to be balanced and to achieve anything. So I really respected him and respect his athletes. And one thing he told me when we started talking about the Olympics is at opening ceremonies, they let doves out. They let the birds out. And he said, Sue, when those doves start flying, excuse me, but the shit starts flying. And because the birds are all, captured, and then all of a sudden they let loose. And so he said, how you respond when all that negativity comes down on you, or when all the poop comes down on you. That's what makes the difference. And that's what's going to either make you, a champion or not. And so I always remembered that. And ironically, then when I saw the birds flying, I was like, oops, okay, it's time. And so I think that's when, when stuff is going to hit, when we drop a relay baton, comes back to me, why did the baton get dropped? And so that was kind of what he, was referring to.
Wow, that's great advice. Tell me about your book. I Want to Run, the Olympic Development Training and Nutritional Guide for Young and Teen Track Runners. Tell me about that.
Yes, I wrote a book called I Want to Run. It's on Amazon, and it's a beginner's guide to track events. It's for the middle school or high school athlete, parents, coaches, a little bit about the sport, about the history of track and field and the Olympics. And then I take each of the track events, the sprints, the hurdles, the relays, and take each of them individually, chapter by chapter, go through and explain the event, how to do it, some sample workouts, some ideas to guide you. It's not a workout. It's not an advanced level book. It's a beginner book, a beginning stage of a foundation. Talk about off the track activities such as, sleep, nutrition, if they want to get scholarships, what kind of academics they need to keep up in order to earn some scholarship money to advance their career. So it's that kind of a framework. And then I hope to now make a second edition where it gets a little more, or gets more technical now. So this was like the ground floor, and then we'll build on it.
Right. If you were 18 again and you could go back in time and change anything, personally or professionally it can be, what would you change?
Boy, I don't know. Because, and one thing too is, even though I was coaching all this time, I don't want people to think it was a full-time coaching paid job. Again, it's all been volunteer on the club side. When I did coach at the collegiate level, that was my paid full-time job. But most of the time I was a middle school teacher or administrator. And so working with kids, parents, during the day, and then come over and work at night and put in the hours and just everything. There's been disappointments, obviously, or times when I thought, well, maybe I should have gotten a certain job and I didn't. But, as time has gone on, I kind of see reasoning, and I realize that was part of my growth pattern and so forth. I don't really know that I would change anything, because I'm still coaching now. And like I say, with high school kids, I've come kind of the full circle, started with the age group girls, and now I'm working with the age group kids too. So it's been a full circle. I've been to the top with the Olympics and coaching Olympic gold medalists, an Olympic champion, an Olympic record holder, and so on. And but I've also coached 8th grade long jump champion. So it's been both sides of the spectrum.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's great. Sue, thanks for coming on the podcast. Still appreciate it. You've had a wonderful career. I'm really glad you shared everything. I've really enjoyed it, and I wish you nothing but the best in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.